Why not?
I like it.
Um,
Welcome to episode
Welcome.
5.
What's the name? What's the name of this episode?
What was our last episode called?
Last episode was great. Let me find the name of that. That was called. Was that in August? No, that was in September.
Yeah, it must have been in September.
Podcast. No, I haven't made a note of it. Somewhere I had.
I
Oh,
should be
here we
able to
go.
find it on
I found
YouTube.
it. I
Yeah.
found it. It was called "I Can't Understand a Single Thing You're Talking About."
Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm not feeling super inspired. Like names are not. The muse is not there today. Names aren't coming along.
not right yet. Yeah.
What about
I'm sure we'll get there before the end of the episode.
all right, we'll leave it lazily
Yeah.
evaluated until we figure out.
That's it. Yeah, near the end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you know, I found
What
out
have you been?
today
Hmm?
that everyone does GraphQL subscriptions, but apparently there's no specification for the damn thing, and everyone just kind of copies what Apollo did and make it up as they go.
Is that good?
No. It's very strange actually, because it seems like a big selling point, and everyone's on board with them, but it's kind of just like made up and unspecified.
So it's not in the original GraphQL spec or something like that?
Well, yeah, not in any GraphQL spec as far as I know.
Not in any. Oh, okay.
But
Oh, wow. I was under the impression everyone used them and they were great.
well, they do use them, and they are great. It's just there's no real standardization as far as I'm aware. People just kind of copy
Oh,
what
I
Apollo
see.
does, but maybe that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's nice. I haven't done any I think I don't know if I ranted about it last time or to you in a different channel, but I was kind of playing around with GraphQL in Python,
Hmm.
and there was one in Java. What do you call it? JavaScript.
Hmm.
A GraphQL server, and it had a JSON type,
Yeah.
um, and that was great, right? Because maybe I just wanted to send JSON as a or receive JSON is
Hmm.
probably what I wanted to do.
Makes
Receive
sense.
JSON,
Yeah.
and that was pretty convenient. And then I was like, then we were like, oh, let's move away from the JavaScript server and move to a Python server.
Sure.
And then I picked the Python server, and that didn't have a JSON type. It only had a JSON string type.
Right.
And one could ask oneself, what is a JSON string? And like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, why not just have it be a string?
Yeah.
And I was, I was annoyed because it
That's
was like,
interesting that they would go to the trouble of making a JSON string but not have any JSON.
I know. And I was thinking like, I was kind of thinking like, oh, maybe this could be forgivable if you're working in some weird language with like really complicated types or something. But I was like,
Like Python.
we're in Python here. Like, like can't we just have dictionaries and like make them easily? Isn't that easy? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's not
That was
Pythonic.
my probably not Pythonic. That was my GraphQL
How's the
gripe.
quantum computing going?
Yeah, well, that is kind of what I'm gonna. So I've got some reading I'm gonna do to find out like what this kind of field of quantum chemistry is even about.
Mm.
Um, and then yeah, I basically just actually the other week I stumbled across one of my new colleagues. He has written, sorry, they have written a uh, in this they've written a kind of something to do with quantum computing in the Clash programming language that I've been trying to play around with. And so I got incredibly excited, because as you know, I love like wasting time doing things in a new way
Hmm.
just for no reason other than why not?
Yeah,
So
why
I was
not?
really, really excited to like see this Clash thing and try and work out how to build it. And I was in the Clash little chat on the FP Slack.
Hmm.
I found the FP Slack to be pretty good because it's actually quite slow. It
Yeah,
doesn't have heaps of messages every day,
yeah, yeah,
which is just so relaxing because I can kind of catch up in a really calm way.
yeah.
And the Clash people are on there.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Um,
I'm on there. It's pretty good.
yeah, it's really good, and the Clash people are like really what's like responsive and friendly. Um, and so I was trying to understand basically how an FPGA works in terms of its the clocks and like how because I've got a little my dream is I've got this little board with a light, and you can imagine like well imagine if I could just send it a color and like turn it on. But
Imagine.
in order to do that, in order to do that, you kind of have to know like, how do you send this thing colors? And then it's like, oh well, I receive colors by receiving 1 byte of information every 133 hertz or something.
Something like that.
And you're
Yeah,
like, oh okay, well, so on. And so you have to do all this
yeah,
counting, I think, to kind of make that work.
yeah.
So
Annoying.
um, yeah, so step one is LED receiving color. Then step two, I'm pretty sure is going to be the quantum computing.
Hmm.
So that's my plan for the next next few weeks.
Well, yeah. I
Um,
mean, it seems like it's very broken down into incremental, you know, steps towards the end goal. Step one,
well, I think so,
light.
and I think
Step
like
two, quantum. And I mean, from what I've
yeah,
heard, I'm no expert, but isn't quantum like heavily involved with light? So you're basically
I'm pretty
most
sure.
of the way there when you got the light.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's basically that's basically all it's about. And the other good thing is like, well, quantum people are always talking about turning stuff on and off, right?
They
So
are
it's like once I
always
can turn
gonna.
the light on and off,
You
I've
got
just got to
light,
turn it on and off.
you got on off,
Yeah.
you're basically done.
Pretty sure that's all. Pretty sure that's all you need. So yeah,
Easy.
that's my upcoming week. But what have you been up to, Haskell wise or otherwise?
Well, what I've been doing is mostly just mucking around with these GitHub Action things because I need to have a bunch of services running there, and I've got all my kind of like proof of concepts and whatever working, but I know I need to do a real thing for real
Yeah,
to get it across the line. So that's been on my plate, and then just a bunch of other kind of bits and pieces, but nothing like super interesting. The thing I was going to have another go at just on the side was there's like everything needs its own pretty printer, which is annoying, but like 99% of the time, really, you just want to kind of be um, doing some kind of like indentation wrapping around various different kinds of brackets, and then you're kind of
yeah,
like 90% of the way towards a good pretty printer. Um,
yeah,
and so like I wanted to make a little parser that kind of like looks for well-formed sets of brackets, and then just kind of like everything else is just like adjacent strings, which it doesn't really
yeah,
care what's inside them, and then it kind of
yeah,
indents all of that into a nice output. So then you should theoretically be able to pipe anything to it, and it'll just kind of nicely lay it out on the screen for you. It doesn't matter if it's JSON or
yeah,
Haskell
yeah,
show instances or whatever. That'd be kind
yeah.
of
That
nifty.
sounds great. Yeah,
Um, and so, yeah, I did that before once, and I don't know what happened to it, but I thought I'd have another go using Megaparsec and a bunch of stuff. But the difficulty is you don't want it to like just throw an error if it can't parse the thing. You'd ideally want it
yeah,
to kind of like do its best. Um,
right.
but then it's kind of like, well, if you've got a misbalanced pair of parentheses, like where is it going wrong? As a human, actually, it's quite easy to tell, but as a machine, it's quite difficult to tell.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. It makes me think. I've been writing lots of this DAL configuration file things,
mm,
and DAL has this the DAL error messages by default. They're not the world's most readable. Like they kind of, it's a little bit hard to read them. I think it took me a little bit of while, a little
yeah,
bit of time to understand them.
yeah.
Um, and but it has a double dash explain,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I was trying to use the double dash explain, but it was actually quite frustrating because like most of the times I had an error that I was genuinely confused about. I
Mhm.
would do double dash explain, and it just it wouldn't it would tell me the exact same thing.
Oh, right.
But I was just thinking like it's kind of and then on the really basic ones it kind of gives you this, instead like you'd get an error message that was normally like 2 or 3 lines, but with double dash explain it gives you like 5 pages.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like maybe it's good for learning, but it's not necessarily good if you just kind of want like, or maybe it is, I don't know, but I just kind of I wasn't having a massively great time with it. I was a little bit like, I just gave up on using it because either it would give me the exact same message or it would say way too much stuff that I just
Yeah,
couldn't read.
yeah, yeah. No, I
But
think I recall
I was
having
just
that
thinking,
experience with Dahl, actually. It's like not the world's
yeah,
best error messages. But
I
what
was
were you
just thinking it
thinking?
reminds me of the kind of like explainable AI stuff, and like people are
Yeah,
always like, I think it's kind of obvious once you think about it, but it's like an explanation. You probably really shouldn't have like general explanations. You need explanations for specific people.
yeah,
It's like the way I'd explain something to you or you'd explain something to me is quite different than how you might explain it to, I don't know, a totally different person.
absolutely.
So I think like, I don't know if these tools can kind of do anything about that, but I was just kind of vaguely, and I don't know if did I actually send you, I found this weird paper that did like a category theory way of explaining things. Did I send you that? It was some weird like,
I don't think
I'm not
so.
gonna,
Maybe.
I'm not gonna be able to find it again right now. Let me see if I can find it on SciRate. But it was some kind of that it was like, they called it like one awareness and awareness,
Yeah, right.
where it's like, did you see that, and awareness?
No, it doesn't ring any bell, but maybe.
Because you know how you had that, yeah, pluralist monism derived category theory as the grammar of n awareness.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Because I remember a topic that you like is something around the theory of mind stuff,
Yeah,
and
awesome.
this one, this I sent it to you, so it's like, um, yeah, I don't know if there's. In this paper, we develop a mathematical model of awareness based on the idea of plurality. Instead of positing a singular principle, telos, or essence as noumenon, we model it as plurality. God, I can't say that word. Accessible through multiple forms of awareness, n awareness. Um, and I think it starts off in a simple way. Like we begin by mathematizing the concept of awareness by appealing
Mhm.
to the mathematical formalism of higher category theory.
Of
And
course.
like, so simple and elegant an approach to the theory of awareness, I think. So
Uh-huh.
we'll
Yeah,
have to maybe
that sounds great. There
cover
was
that paper next time.
that actually reminds me. There was something I came across that Alke had shared, which was I posted it on the Pond Programming Languages Slack, which was
Yeah.
this. Where's the paper? There we go. Got it. I'll share it in the chat.
I like it.
It's called. I'll have to wait till it loads so I know what it is. Oh yeah, lambda calculus and the four color theorem, which is kind of like this way of um, exploring kind of a graph correspondence with lambda terms, which is also something I'm interested in. This
Oh,
is
cool.
by Noam Zeiberger, but it's interesting, and this, like, I'd been talking to a bunch of people about this kind of various concepts, but they all just come together in this talk, which is really, really strange
Wow.
and coincidental. And like I was talking to Phil about it as well. But like the interesting thing to me is like the different kinds of graphs you get kind of correspond to different kinds of lambda calculuses that you get, which I suppose is not that
Yeah.
surprising. But like the and like the craziest one was that if you've got like a linear lambda calculus that corresponds to planar graphs, and it's like, what the hell? Why? I guess it kind of makes sense
Cool.
because to me it makes sense because it's like, well, non-linear kind of lambda calculus, maybe, you know, you 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 can twist things up a bit more, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That
Wow.
one was weird, but that's like also another one of these weird category theory ones. I'll see if I can send that in the chat
That sounds real
here.
cool.
But also there was a video,
Yeah.
so I'll share that as well. Brendan found the
I
video.
like it. Oh, nice. But yeah, another thing that I was doing this week that I chatted to you about a bit was my little I made, following you, I made a brick little tool,
Yeah,
this
that's right.
one to browse Cyrate, and I have to say it was pretty fun. I think the only thing that I've done that I'm not happy about is that I've kind of, because I didn't want to do any async stuff in the interface because I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't be bothered thinking
Yeah.
about it. I kind of
Why?
moved my little async operations out
Yeah.
just to kind of like either side,
Yeah.
which isn't great. But the other thing that I was thinking of that just I kind of ranted to you a bit about, but I want to just have another go here because I think it's interesting, which is like, because I was just because I run the website Cyrate. I wanted to write this tool. I wanted to get, let's say the list of papers for a specific user that was logged in.
Yeah.
And I think, but in particular, I wanted to get them for me,
Yeah.
not for any other user.
Of course.
And the point is like, well, in your browser, you have your cookie, which lets you do whatever you want,
Yeah.
right? Because you're logged in, you can do stuff.
Yeah.
And just what I was thinking is like, it's kind of just from I don't know what the word would be, but like giving more people access to these kind of tools.
Hmm.
It's kind of annoying that there isn't a way to, or maybe there is, but to ask, instead of the OAuth workflow, which is kind of like, hey, random user, can you log into the website using your credentials?
Hmm.
You'd have like a self OAuth workflow,
Yeah.
like local auth, which is like, I just want to log into this website using the credentials that are already in my browser.
Yeah. I think that's fair, isn't
And
it?
it feels fair, but it's just like there's just no way to do it because
Yeah.
like, I mean, of course you could go and like waste time finding out where the browser physically stores that information,
Yeah.
but like that might even be impossible. It might be very hard to recover that if they've like encrypted it or something.
Yeah.
So it's just like, but it just feels like, well, why couldn't I have like a soft API to my browser? You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And that,
Hmm.
and it's not immediately obvious to me that people would like, as long as it's done, like it could even be done. Do you know what I mean? There just needs to be like a soft OAuth workflow, which
Yeah.
is just kind of like, maybe I have to give permission to the tool somehow, but
Yeah.
I don't want to do like the entire process. You,
No.
you, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it
And I was just thinking,
sounds
yeah,
real useful. I guess it's fragile in some ways, but who cares, right? Like, it doesn't matter.
who cares? Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah,
idea.
well, yeah, it's like it's totally fine with it being fragile, like because yeah, as an example, is like I wasn't sure my cookie, I could use the same cookie twice. I thought maybe it would get updated each time I used it.
Yeah.
But to my surprise, it in fact doesn't.
Yeah.
So you can actually, you at least with this kind of this particular Rails app, even though every time you visit the website you get given a new cookie,
Yeah.
probably because it's got like a time in it somewhere.
Yeah.
Like you can actually just use the old one constantly, which
Well, that works well then, I guess.
works well. Maybe it's like a bug in Rails. Maybe one could argue.
Who
I'm not
knows?
sure.
I mean, it seems like it's should work, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking I guess they've got. I had totally kind of never looked at a cookie for many years, and now they've got HTTP only cookies.
Yeah, they're good.
So these are HTTP only cookies, but I would imagine if it was like you kind of wouldn't want it to be, in principle, you don't want what I'm doing, which is like me to be able to copy your cookie one time
Yeah.
and then reuse it for life. It so happens that the Rails one is like, it dies on session end, I think. So I
Oh,
think if
yeah.
I logged out, it might lose it, but
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I just never log out.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. But I mean, it's from a security standpoint, there's not really much you can do about it. Like if the user can, go into the console and copy the cookie, then game over, man.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You can't stop someone from, you know, using that to whatever, delete their shopping cart or something.
Like their shopping cart. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because I was thinking recently, because I'd been looking at how to do this auth flows with Asura, and there's also some interesting kind of like auth session related funniness um, if you're using kind of JWT auth, which is almost like an
Mm,
alternative to cookies. So like the idea is that JWT is kind of nice because it's like, well, you can have any third party create one of these things for you if they've got the right capabilities, and then it uses you know um, public key cryptography so that then it can be verified by whoever needs to verify it, and then it just works. And it's
yeah,
like, wow, that's nice because it's suddenly like decentralized. But then the problem is kind of like, well, like one of these fields in the JWT is role. Um, and so I was like, well, like, firstly, like, what if you want to sign someone out? And then secondly, like, what if you want to change their role? And it
oh
actually
yeah,
is kind of relatively tricky. And so, like, the standard approach that they recommend is, well, you just have a very short TTL on these JWTs, and then you have a
yeah,
service where the user, gets a new one before it expires, which is,
yeah.
you know,
It's something.
it's not the world's worst idea, I guess.
Yeah,
But even then, it's like, well, there's still a period where it's like, well,
it
you're the
can
admin,
go
and you say
haywire.
boot this user because I don't trust them, and then in the
Yeah,
meantime, then 5 minutes or whatever, they're like, well, now I'm just going to troll everyone I know. They've kicked me out. I'm going to
yeah.
do
They're
the
just
most damage I
hacking
can.
you left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But then, so there was like three approaches to solving that. One was like, well, what you do is you have another subscription to the kind of users table open that the client has, and then when you've logged out their user, they get a message basically to their client that says you're logged out, and then the client deletes the JWT, and that's like, but I mean, that still relies on them being a good client. Um,
yeah.
and then there's other ones to do with
True.
actually kind of representing the sessions and the stuff in the browser rather than having the role um, as part of the JWT in a meaningful way. Instead, it's just kind of like a very broad class role, which you don't expect to change from an application perspective. and then like
Oh, okay.
the database has some hierarchy representing your actual kind of role and permissions and stuff. And so
I
then,
see. Yeah.
you know, that should be instantaneous when you change that stuff. That was
Yeah.
interesting rabbit hole to go down, but
Yeah.
it's not immediately obvious. It's just like recommended thing is just use JWTs. It's like okay, but then all these questions come up, you know.
Yeah. Honestly, I hadn't even thought of it actually, because I mean, yeah, because we're using JWTs for some stuff, and it hadn't even crossed my mind about like wanting to kind of change someone's role and then have that be like needing that to be reflected immediately,
Yeah,
or if they kind of adversarially decide like I don't want my role changed, like I want to be this person still.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And
Yeah.
yeah, so the other thing I'm doing now is building a little WebSocket client for GraphQL, which is why I brought up that WebSocket stuff, because
Yeah.
it's there are some out there, but they're either like a bit heavyweight or whatever. So I just want a like super simple one that basically does the bare minimum and lets you pack a bunch of JSON in and out.
Yeah. That sounds nice.
So that should be easy.
Let me
But
hit you with one thing that I've been thinking about that I'm wondering.
okay,
Okay.
sure.
So I can't remember if I've talked to you about this concept before, but it's like the concept is like, well, maybe there's two things, which is like sometimes when you talk to like a person or a business, there's like something that if you could communicate it to them would be very useful. But it's like there's certain things that you can't communicate it to people.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, one is like you can't communicate it because like there's so like it's never going to match with their worldview, so it's like it's never gonna come into their heads. And like maybe it's just kind of, well, first of all, like obviously it's very arrogant to assume that you have that knowledge that's like so useful that's gonna like definitely change this situation. But like who
yeah,
cares? Like
yeah.
suppose you're willing to be that arrogant, and like
Yeah,
whether you're right or wrong, who cares?
who cares?
I kind of um am really interested in like why is it that there's like, and what I kind of always think is like when I feel like I have this knowledge, what I always want to do, but is what is basically always a bad idea, is give someone an ultimatum, which is like, I know this, like unless you do this, I'm leaving, or like whatever it is.
Mhm.
But it's like expressing it in that form is probably more often than not like not productive.
Yeah,
But it's kind of like I'm just fascinated. Like, what do you do when you feel like you have this information, and like, should you just kind of, you know what I mean? And what fascinates me is what do you do when, like, do you know what I mean? It's like you can see something is going to go wrong, but like, there's nothing you can do about it because even though you have the knowledge to convey, it's like it can't possibly be conveyed. Is this a very arrogant thought? Do you know what I'm saying though?
um, yeah, I do. Because I've like had similar situation where, especially like you're using an online service or library or something, and you're just like, I have to tell the author or the owner this thing about the experience because it's so bad, or like it could be improved or whatever.
Totally,
And then you're like,
totally.
well, is there even like a channel for that, or is it just going to bounce or like be ignored, or like, yeah. And then if imagine it gets through, well, what would convince them to actually listen to it? Um,
Yeah,
but I think it's like from a from an arrogance perspective, I wouldn't really frame it that way. I think it's kind of like it's not a problem, right? It's like pretty
yeah,
much unless you're just being a jerk, like I think most people want feedback about how people are
yeah.
experiencing their stuff, like, right?
That's true.
And if they really don't, then they can turn off their Slack notifications or whatever. you know, um,
True.
as
That's
long as
true.
you're not like flooding them with a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff every day, then usually they'd be pretty happy to get some kind of feedback. But like the one I remember is like I got the streaming service Tidal. I was using that, and
Yeah.
they just deleted a whole bunch of the albums I was listening to, and I was like, I need to tell these people, like,
Fools. Yeah.
it's like I like a lot of things about the service, but if I've like just spent ages tracking down all these albums and adding them, and then you just to like delete them, then you know I can't stick
It's
around
a bit
because
unfortunate.
that's probably going to keep happening and be very annoying.
Yeah.
But anyway, like there
Yeah.
was there was no way to tell them that, and like I put some feedback when I just canceled the subscription or whatever, and then all they
Yeah.
did was just send me a ton of messages being like, "Have you considered resubscribing?" No one's read what
Yeah.
I wrote.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, other times I've had the opposite experience where I've like got in touch or whatever with someone and they've been like, "Yeah, that's a good idea. We're not doing that now. We're planning that later," or even like, "Yeah, we'll do that right away," or whatever. So
Yeah.
there's not much downside. Like the main thing I guess is problematic is if there's no channel and there's no way to tell them that there's no channel. It's like I don't know what they're expecting people to give them feedback. Like what mechanism? Probably like at them on Twitter or something. Like you know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's that. But I think the other thing I think about is like maybe this is a weird way of phrasing it, but it's like how like there's these ideas of common knowledge where like
Yeah.
people have knowledge, and maybe another idea is like, well, through language and communication, in principle, maybe I can create any idea that I want inside your head, right?
Yeah.
Because I can just like I can say things to you, and then like you form ideas in your head, and like in many ways, I've made that idea in your head by via my communication.
Yeah.
And what just seems funny to me is like, well, and maybe it's just very obvious, but the point is like, it's not possible for me to create any idea in your head.
Hmm.
It's like there's only certain ideas will I be able to create.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of like how well that's kind of interesting, because it's like okay, it's kind of irrelevant what I know then, like because I just might not ever be able to create the idea inside your head, or at
Hmm.
least there's this kind of like interesting connection between like what you can say and then like how you can like what do you know what I'm trying to get at? It's just like
Yeah.
I just find it so interesting. It's like imagine you're standing next to me and like I'm about to fail at the task I'm going to do, and it's like if you could simply say the right words to me, it's like you would convince me not to do it. But it's like
Hmm.
because of like the way my head is, like at that present moment, it's just totally impossible.
Yeah.
And it's like that just seems so frustrating,
Yeah.
because it's like the information is there. It's like you have the information. You want to tell me. In principle, I want to hear it, but like it's just fully impossible. And I just find that
Yeah.
so strange.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's like you know, interpersonal version of like the incompleteness theorem or something, right? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly,
even though
exactly.
it's the idea is non-representable, kind of so to speak.
That's that's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and
frustrating,
I
but I
just
don't know,
yeah,
like, what can you do?
I don't know what you can do, but I think like what I think about is like how like what I think about is like me as a person. How can I know that other people around me have that information that they want to give me? It's like
Yeah,
if
right.
I am like running a business or like leading a group of people to do something, I might like say to my people, I might say to people like, hey, if you've got a problem with me, like just tell me what. Wow, we almost have an identical pen, by the way. Look at that. That's
That's
pretty
crazy.
interesting.
Yours is a
Um,
fountain pen, right?
no, this one I got in Tasmania. It's a simple pen.
That's a weird coincidence. This is Ren's pen,
It isn't.
actually. I just borrowed it.
Oh yeah.
But you know what that reminds me of? That's like you want to
Mm.
signal to people it's like we can work together rather than, I'm a massive jerk who doesn't listen. Um,
Sure.
so
Probably. It's
that
probably
reminds me
signal.
of the bug bounties or whatever, security bounties in
Oh yeah.
security kind of space, where
Yeah.
it's like, we have a 0 day reporting kind of system, so you can get in touch,
Yeah.
and we'll even like give you some prize if you let us know, give us a heads up, and let
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
fix it, kind of thing, rather
Yeah.
than assuming I don't care, and then you can go sell it to hackers instead. But I
Totally.
guess like,
Yeah.
yeah, like you just want to generalize that. So it's like rather than being like, well, I only care about like security related stuff, you're like, give me
Yeah.
anything you got if it's good, why not?
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
you know, we can
Zero
work
day
together.
management strategy
Yeah, right.
reports is like, I got a report for you. You're not
Yeah.
listening to anything I say.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's worth $500.
I
That's
guess
a great
like,
idea. I like it.
yeah, I think it's a cool idea. I wonder like how practical it'd be from a kind of perspective of you don't want to have a bunch of jerks out there like claiming they've given you all this valuable stuff when they really haven't,
Yeah,
right? So it's like
yeah,
that's the nice thing about like security exploits. Well, I mean, you can argue about the severity of the thing, but at least you can kind of prove it's there and prove it's fixed or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas if it's like, well, I think you're kind of, you know, you're not offering enough range of colors in your
yeah,
MP3 player or something. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it's like, firstly, like, yeah, how do you kind of like put a value on that? Secondly, like,
yeah,
how do you kind of really prove that you weren't going to do that anyway, right? And that this person's actually given you a useful idea. Whereas, like
yeah,
with
yeah,
with a security vulnerability, like 99% of the time, right? It's like, well, you definitely put it there by accident, right? It's like you weren't planning to release
true,
a fix for that later, you know?
true. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, maybe it doesn't work in the generalized space, but I like the idea. Maybe it's like, you could advertise it. You're like, we're trying this new thing to see if it works, you know?
yeah. Well, I think there's certainly like the idea at like the company product, like the company level, the product level, the customer facing level, but I think I also like it at the, I think at the personal level, it's like quite hard because how do you like you know, like communicate to your friends that you want to hear this kind of thing, and then like they all just tell you you're a jerk all the time, and you're like, oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's just, I just think about it a lot. I've just been thinking about it a lot and just thinking about like how you can get get better at it. But I do like the idea of like a 0 day kind of policy, but not just limited to security things. It's funny.
There's got to be a good word for that, or like name for that.
Yeah, I can't. I can't think of it. I can't think of it. 0
It's
day
like rather than like a
person.
0 day security bug, it's like a 0 day
Yeah,
stupid being stupid or something.
or like personality bug or
Yeah,
exploit. No, I can't think of
I feel
it.
like
Today is not a good. It's
if we
not a good
figure
name.
out the name for that, then that can also be the name for this episode. It's like it
Agree,
all
but I don't think
hinges
we're
on
gonna
that.
get it. I don't think we're gonna get it. Is the downside. Oh well.
Something bounty. Um,
Oh yeah.
I don't know. It's never
No,
never gonna happen. Yeah,
it's not.
I got
Not
like
this.
just got no mojo today. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other one with Brick actually, because maybe I mentioned last time I was complaining that they didn't have a lens into their form state or whatever or something like that. Do you remember
Yeah.
that?
I do.
And I got
Yeah.
in touch with the author of Brick, and I was like, hey, I sent him a pull request. I was like, I made this lens for your form state or whatever.
Oh, nice.
And he was like, yeah, it doesn't really work because if you use it to update the state, actually your form doesn't get updated because the elements of the form um, aren't built from that state.
Oh,
So,
I see.
so really, actually, um, you might have constructed them from that state, but the form doesn't know how to construct itself from the state. Um,
Right.
maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, who knows? But you know, it's it just kind of carries the state around for your convenience rather than knowing how to construct itself. So that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Like I still kind of think the lens is useful because then you can, I don't know, get to just compose it with the deeper lenses if you want to get stuff, which is quite good, but it's not really useful for updating. And so
Yeah.
then he provided another function called like update form state or something, which is meant to be a little bit better, but that still didn't work for me. So actually, it's like it's quite a bit of kind of messy, annoying boilerplate to have to destruct and then reconstruct your form like every cycle, especially because like
Yeah.
there's a bunch of stuff in this form that you could forget to put back together again. So it feels like it should have a lens, but really actually like it's quite a bit tricky to think about like what would be a good abstraction to have this dynamic application state that includes kind of like a broader form components that's all kind of derived from the state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't know.
that's how Elm, isn't it? Like Elm just has
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
yeah. Well, Elm, yeah, I think like the the difference is you put forms inside your Elm application. Like your application isn't like a thing inside
Oh, I see. Yeah.
an Elm form. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I know why they did it, but yeah, it's like it seems like maybe it's the wrong kind of way around for nesting purposes, but also like it kind of makes sense that they did it that way because then it's a single operation to kind of respond to all UI events, which is nice. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe there's a more different way you could do that somehow. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was quite annoying because I must have spent a few hours kind of mucking around with the different approaches to it, and then in the end I got back to almost identical to my initial one. I'm like, it's pretty
Yeah.
late, but yeah. And the other one is I couldn't get the bottom area to respond to like mouse scrolling, which was very annoying. Like it couldn't even
Oh, that's
detect it,
frustrating.
which maybe I'm doing something wrong, but like I felt like it should be able to, but yeah, couldn't do it.
Yeah, I didn't try and do much. I didn't try and do anything with the mouse really. I
Yeah,
just
I mean
got.
it doesn't really matter like for my use cases because it's like
Yeah,
how do I do it?
it's just nice to have.
Yeah,
I
like
just thought of a name for this episode, by the way,
yeah,
and I mean maybe it's cheating, but I mean you know that I noticed that Hasura on the Docker Hub has 50 million downloads, which
yeah,
I thought
that's
was
a
quite a
lot.
lot.
It's
And I
heaps.
thought in celebration we could call our episode 50 million downloads, and that should confuse people into thinking that we're very popular. Which would
Okay,
maybe be effective at gaining a larger audience.
I guess. Yeah, but you don't generally download things from YouTube, but maybe that'll that means that
That'll
then we're
change.
not we're not really lying, are we? Because
That's doesn't say 50 million views.
yeah, not 50 million subscribers.
Yeah, that's just downloads.
Downloads.
Who
Which
can argue with
actually, I mean, who knows how many times it's been downloaded? They don't track that.
that? Can't say.
Maybe it's 50 million downloads, question mark.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Oh, good.
reckon that's all right. We can use that.
That's good. Yeah.
There's got to be a good one relating to that bounty idea. I just cannot for the life of me think of another good word.
No, there's definitely good. Yeah, the only stuff that I was thinking that doesn't really work was like, I mean, people already try and do this. I think I've seen people try and like live their life on GitHub, like have a GitHub for their person,
Yeah.
and then you can submit pull requests against that person. Like, you know,
Who does that? Is there like a famous person that does that?
I don't think maybe it's just an idea that I've had, but like I don't know. I don't know that I've necessarily seen anyone do it, but I think I've definitely had the idea in the past, and I think like personal pull requests or
Hmm.
personality requests or something.
Yeah,
But
that's
like
good.
I'm not
You
sure that
know,
it quite.
Linus Torvalds should do that, and he should have his and then like all he does though in response to every pull request, he like insults you and closes it, and or
Yeah,
says that you should have submitted a patch over email instead or
by
something.
email, yeah, plain text email, not anything more fancy. Yeah, exactly. So that's it. That's all I've got.
All right. Well, I think yeah, this week is a quiet one, but maybe it'll be more
Yeah,
exciting next week.
I like it. That
All
sounds
right.
good.